Kendre Miller has earned the New Orleans Saints running back 2 role. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're taking a look at the biggest winners from the New Orleans Saints loss up against the Denver Broncos. Quincy Riley, the rookie corner, is going to push for playing time. Devaughn Vele didn't even have to step on the field and still was a winner thanks to the performance of some other wide receivers on the roster. And we're going to kick everything off with a guy that deserves a lot of praise for his offseason, and that's running back Kendre Miller, who looks to have sealed the RB2 role. We got all that and a little more coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I believe that we saw everything that we needed in order for us to be able to take away a couple of things from the running back position up against the Denver Broncos on Saturday. And one of the biggest takeaways for me was that Kendre Miller has earned the running back 2 spot to serve a featured role next to and right behind Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara went out there and played a single snap, a single rep on that Saturday game, the final preseason game against the Denver Broncos. He went out there, they ran the play, he went off to the sideline, took his helmet off, changed his shoes, put a towel over his head, and he was finito for the rest of the day. And so Kendre Miller ended up being able to go in. Out of the 16 snaps that the New Orleans Saints starting offense played during that game up against Denver, Kendre Miller was with that first team offense for 11 of those snaps. So you saw 11 from him, you saw 1 from Alvin Kamara, and you saw 4 from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'll get to CEH here in just a moment, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I want to focus on Kendre Miller. I believe that move and Kellen Moore's praise, high-level praise of Kendre Miller after the game, solidify what I have been suspecting for some time, which is that Kendre Miller is absolutely in line to be the New Orleans Saints' premier running back 2, have a featured role, and work behind Alvin Kamara. Now, there's going to continue to be some jostling there or over the course of the entire season. Rookie Devaughn Vele got his first game exposure, looked really good during his game, and I thought that he was one of the winners during that Saturday game as well. But all of the signs, all of the actions as opposed to the words, tell you that Kendre Miller, at least at the beginning of the season, is RB2 in this offense. And that is a great piece of news for Kendre Miller, a guy who has absolutely kept his head down and grinded all offseason. Dude changed his number from 25 to 5 in a search for a fresh start. Went from that to making sure that he was putting things together for himself in terms of how he prepared. His preparation was different this year. He took care of his body over the course of the offseason in a different way to be ready. It was the best that he's felt going into a regular season for New Orleans. And Kellen Moore's run game very much complements what Kendre Miller is best at, which is that inside zone run, running in between the tackles, picking up yards after contact. We've seen it already here from Kendre over the course of training camp and the preseason. I don't think we have seen a lick of what Kellen Moore has in store when it comes to that running game. I think we'll see a lot more up against the Arizona Cardinals. That is the biggest mystery that the New Orleans Saints have in their back pocket going into the 2025 regular season. But I do think that Kendre Miller will be able to contribute from a couple of different places. His ability to be able to run in between the tackles and his ability, of course, to be able to pick up yards after contact. He's a more physical runner, which should complement sort of the more outside in space runner that Alvin Kamara can be. He's also shown, Kendre Miller, over the course of those little spurts of appearances that he's had over the course of his first 2 years, that he can contribute as a pass catcher as well, particularly as an outlet in the passing game out in the flat. And so if he can continue to do that, continue to run the way that he runs and get back to the way that he was producing, not necessarily producing at TCU on a season-wide basis, because he's not going to be asked to carry the ball that much, right? He's going to be in a committee with some other guys that we'll take a look at here in just a second. But he's going to be one of the three top feature guys, at least early on in the season. So a major opportunity for a guy that has just busted his tail to get out there and be able to remind himself that he can still play this game. For a guy that came into the league at 20 years old, to hear him talk about that New York Giants game last year as a reminder that he can still play football was genuinely one of the things that tugged at my heartstrings the most in terms of a storyline from the offseason. Like, there's no reason that you should be a guy coming into the league that young and have to be reminded that you can still do it. He unfortunately was in that situation because of injury, and here he is now, absolutely earning that role to be the running back too. Kellen Moore praised his work ethic, praised his preparation, praised the way that he has been taking care of himself over the course of the offseason, and praised the way that he participates and the grind with which he works and the grit with which he works on the field. All of that is what I believe led to Kendre Miller taking that running back 2 spot. Now, he won't be alone in that category in terms of the running back committee. He's going to have some help. I think the fact that we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the first team is actually pretty significant in that Saturday game up against the Denver Broncos. It felt like they also wanted to get Clyde some of that rep with the first team too. His ability as a pass blocker in particular, a place where Kendre Miller will have to continue to develop, gain more experience, all of that. But Clyde's ability as a pass blocker is absolutely something that you want in this offense. Velus Jones Jr. has shown a bit of that too. But it's clear that Clyde maybe is a little bit early in that rotation and could be somebody to maybe even split those RB2 reps once everything starts to come together, assuming that he makes the roster. The tricky part with Clyde is that he's a veteran. And so you can cut him and then have a handshake deal with him, get him back to the practice squad without subjecting him to waivers. And so with Landon Young dealing with injury, with several offensive linemen done for the season, with the Saints having to figure out what they're going to do on the offensive line, the defensive line, linebacker, some of the tough decisions that they'll have to make, injury in the secondary as well, with Alontae Taylor still kind of coming back from that groin injury, they might have to do some creative things like take some of those veterans that don't go to waivers and send them over to the practice squad. Just remember that the initial 53 will be very different from the week 153. So I think all in all, the guys that you might see get the most opportunities in the run game early on in the season are going to be Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, and potentially Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Even if he's on the practice squad, he can still be elevated and be a part of the New Orleans Saints game plan. Another guy that I thought was impressive at the position, though, was Devaughn Vele. First time we got our opportunity to see him for much of the game, averaged 5 yards per carry, not on a lot of carries, but then also added some receiving yards as well. Had a really nice catch and run after Tyler Shough ducked and dived and extended a play and got the ball out to him to go and pick up a first down. I think that Devaughn Vele is going to continue to grow over the course of the season, and his role will continue to grow with him. Because of that hamstring injury, he's missed a bit of install in terms of on-field install and things like that over the course of those couple of weeks of the early portion of the preseason. And so I would expect him to maybe start with a finite role. I do expect that he'll make the roster, but start with a finite role and then continue to expand from there. So I think this could be a very talented running back room, but the biggest question remains is how good really is Kellen Moore's run game in this New Orleans Saints system with this New Orleans Saints personnel? We don't know yet, but come in a couple of weeks and we will absolutely be discussing it here on the show. All right, coming up next, another guy whose role is set to expand over the course of this season is newly acquired wide receiver Devaughn Vele, who didn't step on the field on Saturday, but still walked away a winner. I'll tell you why on today's episode as we continue on with Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Rougiette. Maybe you've heard of Viagra and Cialis. Heck, maybe you've even given them a try. But if you're looking for something to get away from the usual pill, I want to introduce you to Rougiette Ready. We're talking about a next-gen prescription treatment, a 3-in-1 formula that's a tab that dissolves under your tongue, kicks in fast on average within 15 minutes, but the effects last up to 36 hours. So you can always be ready whenever the opportunity arises. So if you're trying to make somebody's roster, here's a good way to get it done with our good friends over at Rougiette. And hey, look, some of those traditional options don't always work, but look, over 150,000 men have already made the switch over to Rougiette Ready. You should too. And here's how you do it. You head over to rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL. You'll get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. August 26th, that's tomorrow, is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches for just 24 hours. FanDuel is giving you deals all over when it comes to the NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP early or you're taking some long shot division winner, heck, maybe you're even crowning your Super Bowl champion before week 1 even begins, this is your moment. Some of the bets that I like, I love Jaden Daniels for MVP, second year quarterback MVPs. They're a thing. And he's got some pretty nice odds on him over at FanDuel. So really like that. And I also really like the Kansas City Chiefs. Last time I checked, they were plus 850 when it comes to Super Bowl champions. That's a great way to go. So go and check them out today. You can visit the FanDuel app and start planning your futures bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, family. Newly acquired wide receiver Devaughn Vele didn't even step out on the field during the game up against his former team, the Denver Broncos, on Saturday, but he still walked away from that game an absolute winner. There is no way in HE double hockey sticks that any of that New Orleans Saints organization, front office, coaching staff walked off that field on Saturday and didn't think to themselves, man, sure am glad we traded for Devaughn Vele. There is no way they didn't think that as they walked away. Let me give you 3 numbers in particular that kind of give you a little bit of that. 2 numbers are numbers from the game. 1 number is from Devaughn Vele. So the immediate comparison that I'll give you here is 25% to 60%. So that's going to be the first thing we're going to be looking at here. The New Orleans Saints had 4 contested catch opportunities for 3 different wide receivers. Only one of them was actually caught during that Saturday game up against Denver. That one that was caught was by Kevin Austin. Kevin Austin, very unlikely to make the roster, though I think a shoe-in for the practice squad because he's got a lot of things that he is starting to do very well. He's been great in the slant game, the quick pass game, all those other things. Keep him with Keith Williams on the practice squad, continuing to develop and learn, see what you get from him by the time you get around to 2026. But 25% on contested catches in that game on Saturday. Devaughn Vele, 60% when it came to his contested catches last year. I think that's major. I think that is absolutely major. So that's 2 numbers right there, right? 25%, 60%. That's something I think you look at in this game where you got those opportunities down in the red zone. You had some of those third down opportunities as well that you weren't necessarily able to convert. Saints convert only 38% of their third downs on Saturday up against Denver. Vele is a chain mover. He can absolutely help you there. I lied. I'm going to give you some more numbers because that's another one right there that I just thought of. So that's another place where he absolutely benefits you. Let me give you one more here, though. Drops. A lot of drops from those New Orleans Saints wide receivers on Saturday. Pro Football Focus charted New Orleans Saints wide receivers just in the game, just in that one game on Saturday with 4 drops in that matchup. At least 2 for Tyler Shough, at least 1 for Spencer Rattler. There's another one that went to either one of those quarterbacks. In any case, 4 drops in one game versus 0 drops in his 13-game season last year for Devaughn Vele. It is so clear that Vele is exactly the kind of receiver that the New Orleans Saints need desperately on this team. A great, big-bodied, 6 foot, 6'4", 6'5" target for your young quarterbacks. A guy that can move the change for you. A guy that can go up and get it, right? Not only is he 6'4", 6'5", but he's got a 36-inch vert as well. And at that height, that's more than enough to go out there and make some plays in the back of the end zone, for instance. And then you look at a guy that has secure hands, caught 75.9% of the passes that went his way last year with those Denver quarterbacks. That is a really, really good place to look and say, okay, where can you improve? And a really good job trying to improve that. Yes, the Saints gave up a 4th-round pick. Is it a little bit expensive? Yes. Do I care? Not at all. The Saints haven't selected, if you go beyond the 2025 season, right? 2025 to 2015, those last 10 drafts, out of those years, they drafted 5 times in the 4th round out of those 10 times. So half the time they don't even draft in that round, and no one missed the 4th-round pick. Nobody said, man, the Saints really would have done better if they would have had a 4th-round pick. Nobody did that. And no one's going to do it next year either. It's not going to happen. And so by the time that Vele gets an opportunity to, if he stays healthy, remember he's dealing with a knee thing, but if he stays healthy, if he's able to go out there and do what it is for New Orleans, just what he did in Denver, 475 receiving yards, couple of touchdowns, Nothing too big, nothing too crazy. Real opportunity for him. Heck, you get 375 receiving yards from a third leading receiver, and that's an improvement from what the New Orleans Saints have expected, whose leading wide receiver last year had 400 yards because of injury. So excellent stuff in terms of Vele not even having to be on the field to be a winner. I want to tell you a little bit more about Devaughn Vele and what I think the plan is going to be for him. And I asked Kellen Moore a little bit about this thing, right? What's the plan? How do you plan on rolling him out? Do you plan on using him as a slot receiver? All these other things. And he kind of talked about and compared this acquisition to Jahan Dotson with the Philadelphia Eagles last year. Last year, the Eagles traded and acquired Jahan Dotson from the Washington Commanders on August 22nd. This year, the Saints traded and acquired Devaughn Vele from the Denver Broncos on August 20th. So just a 2-day difference, a year apart. So you can kind of look at Dotson and see how they incorporated him over the course of the season and maybe expect that from Vele. Here's what that looked like. Jahan Dotson's 2024 season ended with just 216 receiving yards. Nothing too big, nothing too crazy. No touchdowns, 19 receptions. Nice and easy, right? 19 receptions, 216 receiving yards. He got a little bit more involved on a per reception basis or a per target basis when it came to the playoffs, where he had a few receptions, 53 yards, and of course, a big touchdown in one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game. But listen to this. First 8 games for Jahan Dotson last year, he was targeted 14 times, caught 7 passes for 71 yards. So 7 receptions, 71 receiving yards. The last 9 games of the season, he was targeted 19 times, caught 12 of those passes for 145 receiving yards, including the last game of the season where he had over 90 receiving yards. So maybe it's a little bit fluffed up a bit just because they were resting starters and all those other things in that last game. But in any case, you could see that his role was already on track to grow one way or another over the course of the second half of that season. So I would expect very much that Vele will be given a specific role early on in the year, and then that role will begin to expand. They're going to use him probably in one place, one situation, one scenario, and then grow it the next week, and then grow it the next week, and then grow it the next week to the point where you're going to see him, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, Mason Tipton, who are my predicted 5 wide receivers. If they only choose to keep 5, if they choose to keep 6, then I'll go Dante Pettis there because he helps you in the receiving game as well as the return game. But I wonder if that extra spot goes to running back with Velus Jones Jr. because he's such a good returner all of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, but he's really stood out as a returner. But with all that, you're going to see all those receivers line up at the X, at the Z. So the X being the split end, weak side wide receiver that's typically speaking the number one option. The Z being the guy that lines up off the line of scrimmage on the opposite side. That's a little bit more the speed guy, the burner, whatever. Remember, Vele 4.47 speed. And then, of course, you have the slot as well, where you can see all three, or you can see all those guys rotating in all 3 spots. And I expect that that's what you'll see in terms of Vele's role growing in 2025. But I don't think there's any way that the Saints walked away from that game and regretted that trade. No shot. After they saw what they saw in that game, I bet they were very happy that they pulled the trigger and got Vele here to New Orleans. Coming up next, Quincy Riley, the young rookie, one of those 4th-round picks from this past year, is going to push for playing time. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Me and the rest of the Locked On executive staff are going to be playing fantasy football over on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you are a first-timer or you're a veteran that's starting up your millionth league. With season kickoff on September 4th, now is a time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers the most fun ways to compete. Want more ways to play? Well, try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Football Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team is eliminated each week until one team is left standing. You want to play instantly right now with friends? Well, try the new Draft with Friends mode. And if you prefer the classics, get your crew together and start up and go head-to-head in a private league, or no crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off on September 4th, so don't wait. Get your league started now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. New Orleans Saints rookie cornerback Quincy Riley is going to push for playing time in 2025. 2025. Let me give you 2 reasons why I believe that that is the case. The first one, not as flashy, but very important for any coach across the NFL, any position coach, like a cornerbacks coach or a defensive backs coach, any defensive coordinator, any head coach. His ability in run support is going to be very, very valuable, especially with more wide zone offenses across the NFL that are trying to get around the tackles, that are trying to get around the tight ends on that offensive line. You need safeties that are going to be able to crash down, as well as corners that are going to be able to close in, maybe even just hold an edge so that that running back can't get around the corner to get the sideline. You're going to need corners that are going to be a real threat to be able to come down and actually make a play and go down there and tackle. That's something Quincy Riley can do, and he does very well. He did it very well at Louisville. We're seeing it already here in New Orleans as well as he transitions up to the pro level. So his ability to be able to come down and make some plays in the run game, that's something that's going to earn you playing time. That's something that's going to get you on the field. So that's number one. Number two, ball production, right? This is a guy that's got 2 interceptions throughout training camp, had a third or was inches away from a third in one of those training camp practices as well. Now he comes up with an interception in this Saturday game, hence why he's one of the winners of the game up against Denver. And I think that this is a dude that's just going to be hard to keep off the field. And this could work out really, really well for New Orleans, by the way. And think about where he had that interception. I know it was off of a tip drill, but right place, right time, made the play, right? Opportunistic. That's what you want. Saints were not very opportunistic last year, more or towards the latter half of last year. You're seeing some opportunistic situations here. Jonas Sanker coming up with an interception off of a tip. Quincy Riley coming up with an interception off the tip. Both those guys being rookies, huge, right? Really nice production for both of them. And so for Quincy Riley, and you think about where that interception happened when the Saints were down just 1 score in a regular season game, that's a massive swing. Now a sack fumble later, and then a weird loft up by the Denver Broncos that any Saints defender could have made a play on, but none of them made a play on that ended up extending the lead later. Not great, I understand, but it gave that New Orleans Saints offense the opportunity to go out there and close that gap a little bit. So for Quincy Riley, between his ball production as well as his ability and lack of liability, let me actually say it that way, because it is his ability in the run game, but it's just as much the fact that he's not a liability in the run game that I think will end up getting him opportunities to push for playing time, whether that's pushing Isaac Yiadom, whether that's pushing if an opportunity opens up in the slot, whether there's an injury somewhere, whatever it might be, he's going to push for playing time, and he will be the next corner out on the field, right? Kool-Aid McKinstry, Isaac Yiadom, and then Alontae Taylor. Who's the next corner that hits the field? It's probably Quincy Riley, especially if we're talking on the boundary. If it's on the inside, it's clearly Ugo Amadi based on his performance. Although he wasn't able to finish any pressures, he was able to get them. And so you want a guy that's going to be able to do that. So why is the idea that Quincy Riley could potentially push for playing time a good thing for the New Orleans Saints? Well, they just traded away that 4th round pick we love to talk about so much. This is probably one of the last times that I'll talk about it because this is actually interesting. If the Saints have Isaac Yiadom go out there and play more than 35% of snaps during that 2025 season, they don't get the compensatory pick coming over from Paulson Adebo and the New York Giants. So if Quincy Riley were to push for playing time, it would actually be a pretty good thing for New Orleans. But obviously, the Saints have continued to lean in on experience over the course of this offseason. And so Isaac Yiadom, very well positioned to be the starting quarterback early on in the season, but very interesting to see how much Quincy Riley will continue to push and push and push and challenge and challenge and challenge throughout the season, biding his time until his real full-time, full-term opportunity gets there. I think he will be a starting cornerback in the league at some point. We'll see how quickly that all comes around. He wasn't the only one. I'm going to give you a little bit of lanyap now. He wasn't the only corner that impressed. I thought Rajon Wright was really impressive. He was impressive in last year's preseason. He took that over to this year's preseason as well. He's been good in terms of forcing incompletions, making plays on the football. His pass breakup was expertly timed at one point down the left sideline. Gave up a couple of catches, I understand, but for a guy that's, was looking like the 5th or 6th cornerback on the roster, and now with Rico Payton expected to potentially miss a couple of weeks, coming out there and having a strong performance, that's a win for you. Does it get you to the regular season 53-man roster? I don't know, but it certainly gets you on the practice squad and then eventually gets you more opportunities once there are injuries at the position, because of course there will be. Now you look at the other side of this conversation, going over to special teams for a moment. 2 big winners on the day. Number 1, Kai Kroeger. Kai Kroeger is your punter. That's my prediction, that Kai Kroeger is going to be the New Orleans Saints punter in 2025. Why do I say that? Because he was Blake Grupe's holder that entire game. The Thursday The Wednesday practice in the Superdome earlier this week was the first time we saw Kai Kroeger become the first punter over James Burnip in the punter rotation. It had always been James Burnip first ever since Matthew Hayball was cut before the team went back to California. That didn't change by accident. That was intentional. And I think that the idea that he was holding for Blake Grupe was also intentional. I think Kai Kroeger is going to be your punter. That's kind of how we knew Matthew Hayball won the job over Lou Hedley last year when Matthew Hayball was out there holding for Blake Grupe. Lastly, we know Blake Grupe won the kicker competition, but a winner right now, absolutely Charlie Smyth. Charlie Smyth is not going to steal Blake Grupe's spot. It's not going to happen. But him drilling that 52-yarder, going perfect in the preseason, and I'm pretty sure going perfect ever since they went out to that, ever since the Chargers game, so including the practices in between, dude's been perfect ever since. Really, really good momentum for him. He's going to kick in the NFL someday, maybe in New Orleans if they don't want to, if the Blake Grupe contract gets to be too much with how lights out he's been. If he carries it over into the regular season, that might be Charlie Smyth's choice or chance, but he's definitely going to be kicking in the NFL at some point. So there you go. There are some of your winners from Saturday's game. Not all of them. Let me know who your winners are as well. You can send them over to me, leave them in the comments, whatever it is that you want to do. We hope that you enjoyed today's show. Make sure you like, subscribe, come back for another episode, as well as we're here every single Monday through Friday. Kendre Miller, the biggest winner, but certainly not the only winner from Saturday's game. All right, coming up tomorrow, we might have a quarterback decision. If so, we'll break that down and much more. And don't forget to go and check us out over on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. every Monday through Friday. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure that you come and follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.